Hey everyone, Samantha Hildebrand here with Type 1 Tribe. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to those who have been diagnosed within the past few months. If you are a new Type 1 diabetic, I first just want to say welcome to the tribe. I know you probably were not expecting this to happen in your life, and I'm sure your situation was hard to grasp and accept. And you probably have not even fully accepted it yet at this point. But I wanted to talk to you about life with type 1 diabetes today and share with you what it's going to be like over the next few months. So here we go. Being told that you have a new disease, a new lifelong diagnosis, a new chronic illness that won't go away is a really, really tough thing to hear, especially if you don't even know what type 1 diabetes is. And I know a lot of people don't have it in their family at all. Well, yes, some do. Some might have a sibling or a parent, but not necessarily. Not every single person has somebody that they know of that lives with type 1 diabetes. And even if you do know someone, you probably don't know the effects that it really has on somebody living with type 1. And so it is a really, really hard diagnosis to accept. So, first, I just want to say you're not alone. If you are struggling to accept this diagnosis, or if you're just struggling to even understand how it works, because it is quite a complicated disease and you probably are still trying to figure out what even is going on, just remember that you're not alone. There is a massive community of people that live with type 1 diabetes all over the internet, all over the world. But even in your local communities, there's a decent amount of people. You may have not met any of them yet, but I trust that you will. And I highly recommend that you do reach out to those people, finding meetups, finding local groups, because it makes the diagnosis a lot easier to accept. Now, let me just tell you, I have had type 1 diabetes for almost 4 years now. It'll be 4 years in February. And I don't know if I fully have accepted it. So it does take time. And I even actually know somebody who's had it for almost 15 years who he even told me there are days when he does that he hasn't accepted it. Right? Some days are harder than others. Some days are easier than others. The hard days, you may feel like really upset and you don't understand why you got chosen to have this disease and why it's really screwing with your life, because it does. It's a disease that screws with your life. But you are not alone. You have people all around you that understand what type 1 diabetes is, that live with the disease, and I highly recommend finding those people. Thankfully, because we live in a society that is constantly on the internet, we can find people virtually. And so I recommend joining Facebook groups. There are a lot of type 1 diabetes Facebook groups out there. There's one specific for like type 1 diabetes and pregnancy. There's one specific for type 1 diabetes moms or parents, that have children with type 1 diabetes. I have my own Facebook group, so if you're not in it, I highly recommend checking it out. It's called Type 1 Tribe, so you can just Google that, or Google it. You can just search that on Facebook and you'll find it, and you can be accepted to the group. If you have Instagram, I recommend searching for people that have type 1 diabetes. Most of us have our own type 1 diabetes Instagram accounts. If not, we'll put type 1 diabetes in our bios, so it should be easy to find people that live with type 1 diabetes. And I recommend following all of them because we all have our own individual stories when it comes to type 1. And it's nice to learn from a bunch of people about their own personal experiences. And hopefully you can connect with at least one person that maybe your story is similar to theirs. And just do all that you can to not feel so alone, especially if you're the first person in your family that has it. Your family's never going to understand what it's actually like. As hard as they try, they're never going to know, because they don't ever actually have to experience it themselves. And they don't understand that one day you can eat this, one thing, the next day you can have the same exact thing, but you might still need 2 different amounts of insulin for that amount of food. So, they're never going to understand that. So, join the groups, meet the people, message me on Instagram. My Instagram is at type1.tribe. Message me and let me know if you're newly diagnosed. Feel free to ask me any question you want, because I remember when I was newly diagnosed, I had no idea what was going on. And actually, social media helped me a ton. I can remember specific posts that certain people had that actually really helped me. I remember one was from Ariana Freyer. She posted something about doing a correction bolus, and I had no idea that I was able to do a correction bolus at the time. And I was like, wait a second, she's giving herself a shot of insulin without eating any food? I had no idea I could do that. And then I started giving myself correction boluses, which changed my whole diabetes story and my whole diabetes life. So that's just an example of things that you can learn on social media. So just remember, you are not alone. I am here. There's a whole community of people that are here to help you through this diagnosis. The other thing that I think is really important for you to know is that it takes time, a lot of time, to learn about type 1 diabetes. It's not something that you have figured out within a day, within a week, within a month, even. It takes a long time to understand what is going on. It takes a long time to understand what your body is doing and how you can best handle this diagnosis. And I think it took me at least a year to understand what's going on, but I still find out things every single day that help my blood sugar or that make my blood sugar worse, or new little tricks and tips. And I still learn things to this day, mostly because also there's new technology coming out constantly. And so you have to learn all of that technology and how it's helping you, or you have to decide which technology is best for you, if you even want any technology. For example, I'm on multiple daily injections and I have chosen not to be on a pump, where a lot of people want to be on a pump. So it just kind of depends on what you want, what's best for you. And that takes some time to figure out. You may choose a pump that you don't like, but you're stuck with it for a little bit, unfortunately. But then maybe you can switch to the other pump, or maybe you can go back to MDI if you're like, hey, I don't want to wear anything on my body, or whatever the case may be. It takes time to figure out those things. And I think the first year is definitely the hardest with your diagnosis. It takes a lot of learning, education, a lot of trial and error. That is honestly how I learned most things, is failing and then learning that way. And so don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to get a high blood sugar that goes to 300, because then you can realize, like, oh, okay, clearly I did something wrong here, which is fine, right? Like, you're not going to get everything right, trust me. And so you can learn going forward, okay, what did you do wrong and how can I fix it for the next time? So that's really important too. I think a lot of people, when they're newly diagnosed, go on a low carb diet because, one, they were recommended that probably from their hospital. You get those terrible pamphlets that tell you what to eat that are not delicious by any means. And a lot of times it just seems easier to go on a low carb diet. And that might be fine in the beginning, just so you can get a grasp of what's even happening to you. But I strongly recommend trying all the typical foods that you eat and just testing it out and being like, okay, how do I eat this type of food? Because there's a lot of food out there that is difficult, like pizza, but you're not going to give up pizza for the rest of your life. So you might as well try it out, right? And maybe learn from other people of how they bolus for pizza. Like, for example, I had pizza last night and I took 2 units up front because I tend to drop really fast if I take too much up front. And so I just took a little bit to cover that initial carb count, but then I took more about 2 to 3 hours later. And so those are things that you just learn by trial and error. And unfortunately, no pizza is the same, so it changes every single time. But that's okay, right? Like, you start to accept that, and just like you start to just realize it's going to be okay. However, while I recommend that you do try, of course, eating pizza and like fried food and French fries and things that aren't necessarily what the doctors recommend, I do think that eating healthier can help with blood sugar management. Not only blood sugar management, but just like your body overall being healthy. So I think, like, maybe making some new food choices down the road can help a lot. But that's all something that you have to figure out for yourself. It's something that you have to do trial and error and just learn from your own experiences. Don't be afraid to test new things out. Don't only eat low carb because you're afraid to eat pizza. Like, you need to test those things out and just see what happens. Thankfully, we have insulin. So if you start to go high, you can give yourself a correction bolus. And so there's things that we can do that if you mess up, which you will, you will mess up, that you can fix it. That's the best part. We can all fix it. So eat the food that you want to eat. And I guess the third and final tip I have is what you're already doing, is just educating yourself, watching videos like this to learn more about type 1 diabetes and learn from people who actually go through it themselves. I feel like there's a lot of coaches out there who try to educate you, but they don't actually live with it themselves. And while that's great, I just don't think that they're ever going to really be helpful, if you know what I mean. And I'm sure they have good information, but I'm like, well, you aren't going through it yourself, so how do you really know? So watch more YouTube videos about anything you want to know about type 1 diabetes. I have a ton of them. I've been making videos for over 3 years now. So just search things and try to learn about type 1 diabetes and how you can best take care of yourself now going forward. I'm not the only one who makes these videos. There's a lot of people out there that do it. So go learn about type 1 diabetes from me, from other people. You can obviously do that through social media too, but buy some books. Think Like a Pancreas is a great book to read to learn more about how to take care of yourself with type 1 diabetes. But then there's books like No Days Off by Max Domi, who is a NHL hockey player who lives with type 1 diabetes, and he just tells his story. So books like that are nice for, I don't want to say comparison, but it's nice to see a successful person whose goal was to become a National Hockey League player do it with type 1 diabetes. So if you're a young boy that was diagnosed, it's really a good book to read. I mean, I absolutely loved it too, so anybody can read it. But I think there's just certain situations where you might want to read a book that's more educational, but then you also want to read books where you can just kind of compare yourself and be like, okay, if he did it, I can do it too. And you are absolutely capable of doing anything you want to do in this lifetime, even if you live with type 1 diabetes. I think the only thing we can't do is join the military, but that's about it. You can now become a pilot. There are several people out there that have type 1 diabetes that are now pilots, which is absolutely amazing. So I'm pretty sure the only thing we can't do is join the army, which is fine, right? We don't need to join the army. We can do anything else we want in this world. So you are capable of anything that you want to do now. So don't think that this is stopping you from anything, because it's not. The first year will be tough, but you'll get through it and you'll be stronger than ever. Trust me, you'll be stronger than you were before your diagnosis. So once again, welcome to the tribe. You're not alone. I'm here. There's a lot of people that are here for you. Reach out to any of us on social media. Everyone is super nice and will respond back to you. And don't worry, everything will be okay. Thanks for tuning in to today's video. Make sure to check out type1tribe.com. There's some cool snacks on there, some cool supplies, some cool clothing. There's a lot of really cool things on there. So go check that out. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Type 1 Tribe, and follow me on Instagram at type1.tribe. I'll include it below in the notes, but make sure to do all of those things. And when you're ready, I also have a ebook that you can purchase for $19.99. And it has a lot of information. So if you're feeling still very overwhelmed with this diagnosis, it can be super helpful for you to just reference back to. So if you're interested in that, I'll include it below. But other than that, thanks for tuning in to today's video, and I will see you next week. Bye.